knew that this was something that I had to pay attention to as a researcher, as an advisor, as an analyst. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how consumers are using AI and how that's changing your marketing strategies. So with that, I want to share a story with you. Now, this is back in January. My favorite moisturizer, the Charlotte Tilbury Magic Cream, I always order it from Nordstrom whenever I run out, but the day I went online to order it, it was out of stock. Now, I could have waited for it to come back in stock at Nordstrom, or maybe I could have gone to Sephora or something like that to try to find it, but I'm an analyst and I research AI. So I said, I'm going to go to ChatGPT and I'm going to see what ChatGPT can recommend. And maybe since Charlotte Tilbury is kind of expensive, I might be able to find something that's similar to Charlotte Tilbury, but maybe not as expensive. So back in January, I asked ChatGPT a simple question. Can you recommend a face cream that's similar to Charlotte Tilbury's Magic Cream? And this is what it showed me. It gave me a list of 5 different products. I have to tell you right now that the most interesting thing for me back then was that 4 of them were new to me. I had never heard of 4 of these products before. So from the get-go, I was introduced to 4 new products that I'd never heard of simply by asking a one-line query to ChatGPT. So I thought that was pretty awesome. I actually went ahead and purchased one of the products, the Paula's Choice product, and I'm a happy Paula's Choice user. But as I was starting to think about that experience, I decided I'm going to go back to ChatGPT in September, 8 months later, and see what result I would get if I did exactly the same search. And this is what the page looks like today. Pretty different, right? What I'm noticing and what you're probably noticing, huge product images, right? 5 big images at the bottom of the screen. And then, interestingly, if you were to click on one, as I did with the one on the left, you get a screen on the right that shows you how you can actually purchase this product, the different stores that have it, what the price is, and a one-click button that will take you to the purchase opportunity. So this is a dramatically different experience of researching products and even starting to do the shopping process on ChatGPT just in the past 8 months. But I'm continuing on. I decided I was going to ask it some more questions. And ChatGPT ended up giving me a remarkably large amount of information about how I could purchase this product. It gave me the best price on a new or boxed version of it. It gave me the fastest delivery options to the city, Mercer Island, where I live. And of course, ChatGPT being what it is, it's always offering to help me with other things, such as giving me other options for things it can do to help make my journey a little bit better. So that is what is on my mind and what should be on your mind as you think about the products, the services, things that you offer to your customers, your clients on a daily basis. Because 60% of US adults are now using AI to search for information. So I'm not the only one. You've probably done this too, but there's a lot of people, a lot more people than you might think, who are also doing it. And moreover, according to this study by the AP, which is not that long ago, 1 in 4 US adults are using it for shopping. So when you know that, the question that I have and the question that I'm hoping is on your mind and that I'm hoping we'll answer today is how can brands stay visible in this AI mediated world? But before we move on, just a little bit more about me. You heard Denise say a little bit about my background. I did spend 17 years researching social media at eMarketer, was one of the first analysts to define that category and track the rise of usage and the marketing and advertising opportunities that we all know on these social platforms. Even though I live in Seattle and I've lived there for a long time, I'm still a Midwest gal at heart. I lived in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Ohio growing up, and I went to college at Northwestern University, so I am a loyal Big Ten fan. although I can't say I'm too excited about Northwestern's football prospects this year. Topic for another time, maybe over a drink. And before I was an e-marketer, I worked at Advertising Age. I'm a business journalist at the start of my career. And yes, that's me on the right in my senior picture from high school. I did play the oboe for many years. I majored in oboe and English in college. And although I don't play the oboe anymore, it did form the basis of the name of my company, which is Sonata Insights. A sonata is a musical form of a solo instrument and piano. So what do I do at Sonata Insights? I help businesses to navigate this crazy transformation that we're in understanding how marketing is changing because of AI and because of the impact on consumer behavior. And I do that through research that I do in custom research and with partners like the Interactive Advertising Bureau, or the IAB is what it's called, Datos, YieldNo, Ascendant Network. Those are just a few of my many clients that I do research with. And you can find out more about it on my website, sonatainsights.com. So that's the commercial about me, but let's get back to the story. And this is what we're going to talk about today. First, we'll talk about how are people using AI platforms. And next, we'll talk about how AI is shaping media and shopping decisions. Like people like me, how are people changing their behavior when it comes to deciding what they're doing, what they're purchasing, how they're gathering information. From there, we'll talk about if AI is actually a new form of media, like social media, like search, like TV, like out of home. And finally, I'm going to give you a lot of a good reason to think about why you as a brand, why you should optimize for AI search. And then hopefully at the end, we'll have time for a little bit of Q&A, but I know Denise has also told me that if there's anything burning that comes up, please go ahead and enter it into the chat, and she will interrupt me so that I can answer your question. So let's start at the top. What is the consumer doing today with AI? And the big takeaway here is that the average consumer is now very likely to be using AI. And in this context, I mean what we could call answer engines, LLMs, AI chatbots, AI search, ChatGPT. This is what I'm talking about. And we know that there are lots of different ways that AI gets implemented into marketing and into our media choices, maybe things that we don't know about. What I'm really talking about today is consumers going to these platforms and using them to get information, to do shopping, things like that. And starting at the very top with awareness, the top of the funnel, AI platforms do have critical mass when it comes to consumer awareness in the US. I partnered with Insights Exchange for some research that we conducted earlier this year, and we found that half of US adults are familiar with ChatGPT, and almost as many are familiar with Gemini. Now, what's interesting is that other platforms like Claude and Perplexity, which tend to get a lot of attention in the marketing and tech communities, the average person doesn't really know what those are as much. It's really, largely, when you talk about consumers and consumer behavior and consumer awareness, it's really kind of like, ChatGPT's world and Google Gemini's world, and we're living in it right now. So these are the two dominant platforms. Now, in the same study, we asked, well, have you ever used generative AI? Moving down the funnel from awareness to usage. And 2/3 of US adults said in our study that they have used generative AI. And moreover, almost a quarter say they use generative AI daily. And that puts generative AI on par with because I used to do research social media, some of the smaller social media platforms that you might be aware of in the US, like say a Snapchat. That's just to give you a sense of the size of generative AI right now. Now, you all probably remember this, you might know with social media, it's typically been a young person's thing. It starts with young people, and then as social media got more and more embedded in our everyday lives, older and older generations started using it to the point where Facebook is, everybody refers to Facebook as like your mom's platform, right? Something similar is going on with AI. So in the same study with Insights Exchange, we asked, how often do you use generative AI? And you can see among the younger generations, those blue bars, uh, that people in the younger age groups, 18 to 24, 25 to 34, 35 to 44 even, a pretty significant majority are using it daily or always or sometime, at least sometimes. Whereas in the older generations, 45 and up, we're not seeing as much daily usage. Now, I think that is going to change pretty rapidly and may even change more rapidly than we saw the shift in social media. Because, I don't know about you, but like things seem to change exponentially when it comes to AI. I mean, like you blink and there's something new, like there's a new model or a new program or a new offering or something like that. And so I think that we're going to see, if we were to do this study again at the end of this year, we would already probably see a difference in daily usage across all generations where the numbers are going up. Now, another interesting comparison, and it is to social media in terms of the usage. So this takes a little bit of setting up, but bear with me as I talk you through this chart. Back when I was an eMarketer, I worked on forecasts for social network users, and starting in the second year after Facebook started, we started forecasting monthly usage of social networks. And I decided, well, I think I want to compare what that forecast was to some data that I have access to from a company called Datos, that also discusses monthly usage of AI. So this compares the uptake of social networks in what I'm calling year two of social networks, which is the year after Facebook was founded, or 2005, to year two of AI platforms, which in this chart is 2024. Now, ChatGPT was founded in late 2022, so technically, year two would be 2023, but I am making year two 2024 because ChatGPT was founded so late in that year. But the takeaway here, now that I've given you all of that setup, is that we're on a similar trajectory when it comes to AI usage among US adults and US consumers, internet users. It was the same in year two. It's tracking the same or even more in year three because this Datos data is from June. So I think if we were to look at December of this year, we might start to see AI pulling ahead of social media's penetration. Will that continue in year four, year five, year six? I think it will. We'll have to see. But I wanted to put that in perspective for you because we know how important social media has become and still is. And I am really starting to get convinced that AI is on a very similar trajectory. Now, with that usage data in mind, let's dive a little bit deeper into shopping and media decisions. And like the example I gave you at the start of the presentation of how I searched and found a new product, a new facial moisturizer, these AI platforms are really making a dent in how we typically think about shopping and media decisions. Part of that, or maybe a lot of that, has to do with the fact that today, the most common reason why people use AI isn't necessarily work or school, it's for personal reasons or to have fun. Way more people are using AI outside of their work lives to get things done than they might be in work or in school. And so, what are people doing when they go onto AI platforms like ChatGPT? Well, in my study that with Insights Exchange, we found that the most common activity was, as you might expect, doing research or answering a question. Quite likely that's how you're using AI as well. Or to write something, again, very common behaviors. But what I think is interesting is the number on the bottom right here, getting product recommendations. So already among people who've used generative AI, 1 in 5 are using it to get product recommendations. And again, that ties very nicely with the stat that I gave you at the start of the presentation from a different study, which said that 1 in 4 people are using these platforms for shopping. Just some more data to pile onto that, just to give you another sense of how things are shaping up when it comes to AI as a shopping medium. According to Capgemini and Bain and Company, around 40 to 46% of consumers are either really, really enthusiastic about the impact of Gen AI on online shopping, or they use these LLMs to ask for shopping recommendations and decision support. So again, this is a behavior that is really starting to trend up and become noticeably important and just noticeable in general among larger and larger swaths of the population. Now, so far in the past several minutes, I've given you survey data. I want to also give you something more, even more concrete, because survey data, as if you're in research or if you've ever done market research, you know that sometimes what people say is not exactly what they do. So I turned to Adobe. So Adobe publishes a quarterly study of generative AI traffic to retail sites. And in its most recent study, which was just published in August, it said that generative AI traffic to retail sites has grown 4,700% in the past year as of July 2025. That's incredible. Okay, so that is what that means is as someone's visiting a generative AI site, they might see a link to something to a retail site. The percentage growth in that activity of people clicking on those links and going to retail sites is 4,700% in just 1 year. This is what it looks like in chart form. I don't know about you, but anybody who ever works in a business, you want to see those numbers going up and to the right. And that is exactly what's happening with traffic from generative AI to retail right now. So what does it all mean? What does it all mean that this activity is increasing in behavior and people are using AI more and more for media and shopping decisions? Well, to me, the logical conclusion is that AI platforms are now essential marketing and media destinations. I'll walk you through what I mean by that. It's time, in my opinion, to consider not just using what I would call traditional digital media, like search or social media, but to start adding answer engines or AI platforms into how you think about media. If you're buying advertising, if you're marketing, adding these platforms is now essential. And here's why. We all know that traditional search is really good for things like fact finding, navigation, product research. And we turn to social media for discovering products, trends, keeping up with friends and family, of course, but in a commerce or commercial sense, getting reviews and recommendations and visual search. Well, the thing about answer engines, about AI platforms, is that they can do everything that social media and traditional search can do, but on a bit bigger scale, because they also allow for complex queries and educating you, comparisons, creative brainstorming. These platforms are kind of a one-stop shop that I think is forming the next potentially major media destination for advertising and marketing. Another reason why I think this is happening is that AI platforms have the ability to cut across all stages of the consumer journey. Now, unless you have a big screen, you're not going to be able to make out what's in this diagram from BCG. Don't worry about it. But essentially what it shows is the classic consumer funnel of awareness, consideration, and then finally taking action. And then it plots various marketing channels according to where they sit in these different buckets. What drives awareness? What drives consideration? What drives action? And what's interesting is that in this marketing funnel, there's a few types of media that cut across that appear in all of these stages. Search, social media, email, and word of mouth or influencer marketing. Well, I'm going to add AI platforms as well, because we know that AI platforms can introduce you to a new product, can lead you down the consideration journey, and can entice you to take an action. And that, I think, makes them as powerful as these other platforms, which are all billions and billions of dollars in ad spending or marketing spending every single year. Now, as this is happening, we're going to start seeing familiar ad formats be reinvented for AI platforms. Now, some of these platforms already do sell advertising. It's not a very big thing right now, but I think it's going to become bigger in the future. And we'll probably see new forms of search advertising or video advertising, or maybe even audio advertising that are embedded into AI platforms, whether it be a ChatGPT or a Perplexity or Rufus, of course, Google with AI overviews, or perhaps Microsoft Copilot. So we're just in the early stages, but I do believe that advertising is going to be a bigger part of all of these platforms in the not too distant future. And as this transformation is starting to happen, another interesting phenomenon is happening, and that is that things that we did and have done for years when it comes to digital marketing are suddenly kind of in vogue again. Like, they're actually important. Things like your content marketing, your blogs, your webinars, the research reports you might publish, things that you're putting out onto the internet to live and breathe and provide information about your company. Those are becoming a lot more important, as are the design of your website. What information does it have? How are you doing SEO? The fact that how you show up in AI, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, that's a big question right now. And all of this feeds into these AI platforms that are ingesting information that companies are putting out. So the more content that you're putting out that tells more in your message, your story about your company, the better designed that your website is so that it can be ingested by these answer engines. And the more that you do the AI version of SEO, the better it is going to be for your company when it comes to how you show up in an AI search when someone is doing a search for something that they might be interested in. So with that, I'm here to urge you to, if you haven't already started doing this, make AI answer engines a priority for your marketing. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of what I'm talking about here and what it means. This chart really, I think, crystallizes for me the importance of why it's important to pay attention and to actively change your marketing so that you are present in AI platforms. So this is data from a company called Higher Visibility. The chart on the left is from a survey done in February. The chart on the right is from a survey done just a few months later, August. There's been a dramatic difference in the percentage of people who use these AI search tools daily. It has doubled in 6 months. And the never portion of this chart has shrunk by almost half. So again, I've given you a lot of data in this, and hopefully it's giving you the sense that this is important. I like to present a lot of data. It's part of what I do as an analyst. And that this, I think, though, really, if there's any kind of money chart in this, I would say this is the one to screenshot and take back to your managers, your bosses, people you need to convince about the importance of AI search. What does AI search do? It streamlines the customer journey. It provides relevant and satisfying answers, right? I walked you through this at the beginning of the presentation without needing to do a whole bunch of clicks, without those blue links of Google that you might be familiar with. More and more people are saying, hey, I'm happy with the answers that I'm getting from a search that I'm doing on AI. And it's also speeding up the path to purchase and enhancing the overall customer experience of learning about a brand and getting comfortable with it. Just a side example, I'm in New York. I wanted to go and get a manicure this week. And because I'm an analyst who studies AI, I went onto ChatGPT and I said, here's where my hotel is. Recommend some nail salons near me. It recommended 3 places. Now, I didn't make the decision completely with ChatGPT. I actually did go to the websites and go to Google and check reviews, but I did find a wonderful little nail salon through ChatGPT. So just another really great example of how these platforms are very quickly changing what might have been in the past kind of a longer behavior, or me just kind of randomly picking a salon and hoping for the best. Now, a lot of studies have come out in the past couple of weeks, months, talking about how traditional search and AI search compare. I could give you a lot of information, but I know that I've probably given you way too much data already. So what I did was I did a meta-analysis of a bunch of studies, and I wanted to coalesce a few important points about traditional search behavior and AI search behavior and how they're different in a few ways. So first, the idea of what we call a zero-click search. Now, if you're not familiar with that term, essentially what that means is you type in a query and you get an answer, and then you don't do anything else. You're happy with the answer, whether it be whatever ChatGPT tells you or whatever you see at the top of maybe a Google search in your AI overview. You get the answer that you're happy with. Well, in traditional search, it's probably less likely that people will be performing these zero-click searches. Even if there's an AI overview at the top, people are still more likely to scroll down, maybe less likely than they were before, but compared to AI search, they are still scrolling down and clicking links. So I'm not here to say today that traditional search is something you should abandon. By no means, do not abandon traditional search because many people are still using it. But when it comes to AI search, a lot of people are just very happy with that information that they get when they type in that one little query and get their answer from ChatGPT. So they're more likely to perform these zero-click searches and not necessarily click out. However, what happens if they do click? This is sort of an emerging category of study, and so there's not as much information yet about what people might in the advertising industry might call like attribution or understanding, what caused someone to ultimately take an action. So when you're talking about this idea of post-click engagement, the early studies that I've seen are showing that people who come to a website from a traditional search are somewhat less engaged than people who come to a website from AI search. These people, and the theory there is that probably someone who's done a search through AI is further down the customer journey, further down the funnel, more likely to take an action. And so they are ready, they are armed with more information by the time they get to that website. So it's very likely that they're going to be more engaged and more likely to do something post-click than someone who's coming to your site from a traditional search. And then just, this is just interesting to me because I used to be a journalist, and I'm curious about, people go to Google, they like look for, a sports score, or, a game is on, what's happening, what inning is it, what's the latest news? That's a typical thing that a lot of people use traditional search for. And it's true that right now, more people are more likely to continue to be using traditional search when they are seeking this real-time information, whether it be news or sports scores or something that's happening around them. AI is just not quite set up for that yet, partially because of the way that these AI platforms are trained with data that comes up to a certain cutoff point, and then they need to search the web. So there's a little bit less likely to see consumer behavior seeking real-time information and going immediately to an AI platform to get that information. So now I just want to take you through something kind of fun and interesting. So I want to show you, because I know a lot of you are from the AMA Iowa chapter, although I know some of you are from other parts of the country as well. I want to show you, how does an Iowa brand show up in search on AI? So I picked Jolly Time. Jolly Time is wonderful popcorn. I've eaten a lot of Jolly Time over the years, but I was interested in finding out, how does Jolly Time show up when I'm doing a search for healthy snack options? So I know I've given you the image of Blasto butter, and I know it's the afternoon, and now I've probably made you hungry. I know I'm hungry, but bear with me. Today we're talking about how Jolly Time shows up as in searches for healthy snack options on AI platforms. And so what I did was I went to a company that I know called Gumshoe. Now, Gumshoe is a Seattle-based company that offers the ability to learn more about how brands show up in AI search, and then provide information, how you compare to other brands, how you can maybe even improve how you show up by posting new content, or by changing how you're perceived on review sites. So there's a lot of really interesting things that Gumshoe provides. And so Gumshoe gave me this data in partnership. And I found that, unfortunately, Jolly Time doesn't show up that well in AI search. So it might be a brand that needs to make some improvements if it wants to show up better. It has about a quarter of the visibility in a search for healthy snack options than other brands like Skinny Pop or Angie's. Now, obviously, Skinny Pop has that name, that brand recognition of Skinny Pop. So, but if Jolly Time did want to make a marketing play for healthy snack options, they should know that they're not right now showing up very well in AI search when the platforms are making recommendations about healthy snack options when it comes to popcorn. Now, you can also, on the platform, on Gumshoe, you can narrow it down to different types of persona. So I'm an empty nester. My two daughters are graduated from college. So I said, how does Jolly Time show up if someone is doing a search and they're a weight conscious empty nester? Well, again, not too well. Jolly Time has no mentions in searches for healthy snack options by weight conscious empty nesters. But that's not terrible news. There actually are things that Jolly Time can do with platforms like Gumshoe to improve their presence in AI search. Gumshoe allows you, and this is the example on the left here, is an example of a piece of content that Gumshoe created based on assets that it was able to pull from existing material on Jolly Time's website. And it started to build new assets that, if Jolly Time wanted to, they could post these to their website. And then the next time an AI crawler came, it might have that information and improve Jolly Time's standing in that search. So I give you that case study because I think it sums up really well, and considering it's an Iowa brand, maybe even hits home, why it's important to do things like learn the differences between traditional search and AI search, because they don't work the same way. And why it's important, as I just mentioned, to adapt your content strategies, to optimize the content that you're publishing for these AI platforms. And some of that might require you to rethink your marketing investments. You might start to ask yourself, should I start to rebalance the money that I'm spending on SEO and put some of that money towards AI? Or should I take some out of my advertising dollars and put that towards improving my presence in marketing, marketing presence in AI? All of this is going to prepare you for the idea of exploring new business models, because I think what we're seeing now with AI is really only the beginning, because we might start to see direct transactions directly on these platforms, and eventually maybe automated purchasing with agents that do the work on our behalf. So with all that in mind, I know we only have maybe a few minutes, and I do want to leave lots of time for questions if there are. But I wanted to close with a few words about AI and trust. And a lot of my thinking about this stems back to the days of me writing research about social media. Because as you might be aware, social platforms kind of have a trust problem. People, you for decades, for years, have complained about how these platforms use their data, how these platforms protect their privacy, how much misinformation or disinformation is on these platforms. How toxic is the information there? I mean, there's all these concerns that boil down and affect people's trust in social media. But an interesting thing that has happened over the years is that for all the concerns that people have about trust in social media, we're not seeing overall usage of social media going down. It's still rising. People are still using these platforms despite their concerns. And the reason I bring that up is because I think kind of the same thing is happening right now with AI. So right now, we're seeing a fairly high level of trust in AI. So Edelman, which is a PR agency, every single year they publish a trust barometer where they rank and all different kinds of marketing and media channels according to the trust in those channels and and also technologies. And they found that almost half of US adults trust AI. That's actually kind of higher than I thought it would be. But, then again, you have to think about it the flip side, which is that means 51% of US adults don't trust AI. So there's a lot of room to grow. More interestingly, and I think this goes back to, again, young people being more willing to try new things like social media or like AI, more young people are willing to trust AI. 57% of 18 to 34-year-olds in this survey trust AI. Another dimension of trust comes to the idea of how trust impacts your shopping. And so this is actually a recent study from Walmart, and I found it super interesting because it compared trust in AI recommendations to trust in social media influencer recommendations. And I know from my research in social media and all the years that I've studied it that one of the cool things about social media creators or influencers and why they work so well as marketing vehicles or marketing, people to market with, is because people say they're like me, right? They associate with them. They relate to these social media influencers, and that's been one of the really positive selling points of influencer marketing over the years. Is these are people who can have an independent viewpoint about a product or a brand or whatever, but they can say it in a way that their followers trust them and are willing to purchase because of the words that these influencers say. The fact that AI has more trust among shoppers than social media, fascinating to me. And I'm not really sure I can explain to you why at this point. But it's true. I mean, at least across multiple different demographic cuts, like men or women or Gen Xers or parents, people with high incomes, all of these people are showing a greater likelihood to trust AI than they are to trust these social media influencers. So TBD on exactly what that means, but I wanted to, again, liken this to something that you're familiar with and give you a kind of a benchmark to say, people might actually trust this more. What does that mean for our strategies when we think about how we're marketing and what marketing channels are we using? And another dynamic on trust relates to how generative AI compares to physical stores or retail websites or apps. And as it turns out, generative AI does really well. So this is a ranking of preferred source. So basically, it actually should be a pie chart technically rather than a bar chart, but it shows the segment of people, generative AI users, and what is their preferred source for purchase recommendations. Generative AI is their number two preferred source for purchase recommendations, behind being in a physical store, slightly ahead of social media, and pretty far ahead of retailer and brand websites. So again, just another thing saying there's a lot of trust in AI, and maybe more than you might think at this point. So, to add it all up, we do have to remember that there is a lot of trust in AI. But again, if you go by that Edelman study I showed you, about 50% or half of people in the United States don't trust AI. So what do you do for those people? How do you, if you're marketing with AI, if you're marketing on AI platforms, how do you make them comfortable? And I think it's by following these 5 steps. Educating people on why you're using AI, why it's important to them, what it means for them, what makes it easier for them. Education is such an important component of AI when it comes to your customers and your audience. I think being transparent is important as well. And whether that be the fact that you are using AI in some way, or perhaps if your advertising is created in some way where their AI was a component. I think it's important, again, to be transparent, to be open about AI, because I think that makes people feel more comfortable. Going along with that is the idea of using good ethics. Ethical use of AI is so important. You don't want to get caught in using AI in the wrong way. Involving actually goes along very well and very nicely with educating. So the more that you can involve people, whether that be having a focus group or whether that be bringing people into, surveying your customers about their comfort level with AI, involving people in your personal use of AI as a marketing tool and bringing people into the process will again make them more comfortable and likely to trust what you're doing more. And finally, leveraging the communities that you are involved in, whether those are online communities, whether those are communities of people who support your brand, your physical communities. These are all options, again, to be an open, transparent, educational, and ethical user of AI in your marketing. So I hope by the end, now that we've gotten to the end of the presentation, almost time for the Q&A, so get your questions ready. We know that consumer behavior is changing. We know that people are using AI more often and for more reasons and to get things done. We know that because that's happening, the media landscape is evolving, and these AI platforms are becoming important and essential marketing and media opportunities for brands. I know it's a crazy time. I know there's a lot to think about, and I've probably given you even more in this past 45 minutes or so. But keep calm. Watch the hype. There's a lot of hype out there right now about AI search and all the companies offering various things. But stay discoverable. Don't let your brand get lost as more and more people are using AI on a daily basis. So one more thing I wanted to share. For those of you who've stuck around to the end of the presentation, if you do want to learn more, I am offering a complimentary 25-minute advisory session where you can learn a little bit more about what I do, but also talk about your own challenges, your own things that you want to do with AI to reach your customers and your consumers. Go ahead and scan this QR code. It'll take you to a form where you can sign up, and we'll work out a time to talk about what you're looking for, what you or your clients are interested in, and hopefully put you on a better path toward embedding AI in your organization. So thank you very much. This is how to keep in touch with me if you would like to, if you'd like to follow me on LinkedIn or reach out to me directly. But it's been really, really awesome to present to you. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and go back to the webinar, and we'll see if we have any questions to answer.